This is a bigger wide than we used to. There are a lot more cables here, I think.
Testing the microphone. Yep. Audio case working.
that we have. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the Manzanita City Council to order at 6:01. Thanks to everybody who's here tonight. We have a shorter than normal agenda, normal being what we've had for the last several months, but we'll always see how it goes once we get started. First thing we'll do is see if we have any requests for audience participation or anybody who'd like to speak. Nancy, do we have anybody sign up for that?
No one has signed up and there's no hands on Zoom.
Okay. We continue to have no hands on the, give it a
We
minute.
have one now.
Okay,
Right.
always good to wait for a second on that.
Linda, can you start? Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Linda, go ahead, please.
Hi, apologies for not being there. I suddenly have a little cold. I just wanted to point out something that I realized recently that I find rather remarkable and interesting. And I'm not sure, but I believe this is the first time in Manzanita history that every leadership position in our city's government is being held by a woman. From our fantastic city manager to our mayor, to our council president, and the chairs of the planning commission, the budget committee, and the short-term rental committee. So I feel like, you know, as we watch the federal government sort of erode and erase women from our rights and accomplishments, I think it's really important to point out what we're doing here locally and how well our city is being run. And also just heartfelt gratitude to all of our volunteers who do everything to make Manzanita the vibrant and inclusive community that it is. So thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
I know we have at least one or two members of the Historical Society here, so I'm sure that'll get into the record some other way. Now that it's been noted for the record.
I just want to say that as counselors, Jerry and I and Brad are not chopped liver.
I would
No,
fully
sir.
embrace and agree with that remark.
You get paid less.
Okay, before we get out of order, let's keep moving on. Do we have any other hands up?
No, there are no other hands.
Okay, so we'll do as we usually do, which is move to the consent agenda next. For those of you not familiar with that, that's a kind of a maneuver or process we go through where we basically approve the minutes of several meetings as well as acknowledge the approval of the bills. And we do it in one fell swoop. This time it will include the minutes. We've had several meetings this month. The April 9 regular session for the council, the April 14 special session, April 15 budget work session, and April 16 work session, and then approval of the bills. Do we have anything from any counselors that needs attention or change or discussion? Jerry?
I just have one small note in the minutes from our council meeting on April 9th, page 3, under short-term rental policy recommendation. On the motion that Brad made regarding growth policy option C, I voted no. It says I abstained. I understand where the confusion came from. I apologize.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay.
Good catch, thank you. Okay, so we'll change that for the record. All right, is there anything else? May I get a motion to accept? So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the consent agenda?
Hey.
All right. Next, we have the city manager who will offer her report. So Layla, if you would go ahead, please.
So I'm going to start with the update from State Parks, which I just got today. So it's hot off the press. So there's good news. They're planning to reopen the day use area park, including the boat ramp, the south day use parking area, and the multi-used path east of the main entrance road on May 23rd.
Wow.
Yay.
Great.
The day use areas on the east side of the park are expected to remain open after the holiday, although there might be occasional limited interruptions there for construction activity. That also means the main entrance off Gary Street will be reopened to the public at the same time. The camping loops on the west side of the park and Horizon Street entrance will remain closed through June. They're still continuing to work on campground improvements. They're experiencing some delays in receiving materials that would allow them to finish that, which can relate to. So they're not able to finalize the date of the campground reopening or release reservations until they're confirmed, but they're optimistic that they'll be able to stick to the July 1 day, which is great. Great. So they still have work to complete, park cleanup, other details over the next 6 weeks, and they'll issue a press release. So they're just asking folks that when they do open the day use area to stay on your side, stay on the open side, stay out of the construction area because it's dangerous. So that's great news. I mostly have construction updates too.
Sure.
So the Classic Street RFP went out to bid. So it's currently out to bid. We actually issued an addendum today to split out the retaining wall so that we can get a better understanding of that cost with respect to the rest of the project. So that's been released. If you're interested in looking at any of those documents or the plans, you can access them pretty easily on the city's website. There's a button on the left-hand side of the website that will lead you to the bid, to all the plans. And so if you're interested in seeing what that looks like, please check it out. City Hall continues to progress. So I was over there today. I'm tending to kind of go over there a couple times a week now and answer questions. It's looking so good. It's so cool and beautiful. And I can't wait for all of you to come and see it, which also we've set the date for the grand opening, which is going to be August 2nd. It's a Saturday. More details to come on that, but we're planning to have a big party and we'll be opening up the public areas for the public to check out and stuff. So we're really excited to share those spaces with all of you. Josh will be there to DJ. It's going to be awesome. Couple of other notes. This stuff's all on the city's website, but I think it's important to know that we are really trucking through the housing ordinance amendments. And it's a big deal. So the Planning Commission will be holding a work session on May 12th, which is Monday. And this is their, let's say, third work session on the ordinance amendment. So this is to implement Oregon's middle housing rules and Senate Bill 406 that required Tillamook County cities and unincorporated urban areas to adopt. We anticipate that work session will then lead to a public hearing that will be held on June 2nd. And that'll be held via Zoom at, I think it's 6 p.m. So it's on the city's calendar. So I just want to encourage people who are interested and want to provide testimony to attend that public hearing because that's your opportunity to weigh in on those amendments. And if you want to educate yourself, the last couple of planning commission meetings have been riveting to say the least. But there's also, we posted materials on the city's website. So it's posted under the planning commission's page. And that includes a red line of all the ordinance amendments, a memorandum that kind of summarizes all of those amendments and some additional materials. And then right after that, City Council's work session next week will also be focused on the housing ordinance amendments. So we'll have a double hitter that week on housing and are anticipating that the public hearing on adoption of those amendments, so that's adopting an ordinance, will occur at the June 4th City Council meeting. So that's all what we plan to do. It may change. And so just kind of keep your eye on the city calendar and then I'll do my best to keep folks updated about that. So that's a lot. There's a lot happening. It's really pretty exciting. I think the Planning Commission has provided a lot of input and feedback and guidance on those ordinance amendments. And just from a process standpoint, we had to have adoption ready ordinance language ready by June. That doesn't mean it has to be adopted, but we have to have it ready by June. And since we're anticipating the first reading to occur June 4th, we have 2 readings before it becomes law. The Oregon Middle Housing model code goes into effect July 1. So that's kind of one of the major impetus to get our ordinance amendments adopted, because otherwise and they're fine, but they're generalized, not specific to Manzanita, whereas the ones that we've been working on for the past 9 months are very specific to Manzanita. So there's a great deal of incentive to get those done. But we want to do it right. We want to make sure we get enough and all, feedback and comment from the public on it. And I will note that the amendments are based on a significant amount of public outreach that occurred early on in the process. We had a workshop, we held a survey. So we took all that information in with the state law, created a draft set of concepts that the Planning Commission reviewed, gave staff guidance on, and we've just been doing this cycle now for about 3 months. And so a lot of hard work went into it, but much of it is based on what we heard from the community. So that's all I got.
Can we take a minute though? I think it'd be good to say a few things about what the process looks like now and what's common to happen, because the Planning Commission's been heads down on this. Some of it's fairly technical. The average person who's interested in the town but doesn't know all the details will not have watched those meetings, and they won't watch the meetings. We know that. It's there for the person who wants to go deep.
Right.
So in the information that's available on the website, can we just be, you mentioned it, but I'd like to call it out. So there will be something there that's fairly straightforward for the non-technical person to look at, to say, oh, the gist of these changes is A, B, and C. And A and B are because of state law requirements, and C is more our discretion, something to help people digest it.
Yeah, it is still fairly technical, but we do kind of highlight. So what we're doing is what we're required to do and then what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so the things that are what we want to do are sort of parsed out, but we are in a technical phase.
Mm-hmm.
So the memorandum, I think, does a good job sort of outlining sort of broad changes. I think if you want something that's a little bit more what you've described, you'd go back to the code concepts, which was 2 meetings ago. And that talks more conceptually, but now we're in actual like ordinance language. The presentation, so if you don't want to sit through the whole discussion, I would encourage folks to listen to Marcy's presentation at City Council next week, because she does a really excellent job of distilling things down to the root. And
When you say at city council, you mean the work session?
yes, or at the work session, or at the work session with Planning Commission, either or. The difference between those 2 meetings will be that if there's additional feedback from Planning Commission, we will discuss that with the City Council on Wednesday. So I think that's the best way for folks to really get that information, is because we're at such a technical phase, is to just listen to the presentation. Marcy is an expert in middle housing. She was one of the first people to implement Oregon's middle housing rules. So she's very knowledgeable about that. But it's pretty technical at this stage.
And last week you sent out materials associated with all of that.
Yeah, to all of you to get you started, get your
Yeah.
homework started.
So I asked Nancy to print it all out for me so I could do the deep dive, and I killed about
Whoa.
3 trees.
Half of those are red lines.
So,
So we're going to be, I mean, we're doing work that gets us in required alignment with state law, which is designed to create housing to help move us out of the statewide and certainly countywide crisis.
Yeah.
Affordable housing. It also includes some updates that were pretty overdue because this part of our city of the code hasn't been looked at for a while. So it was a chance to go back and really look, because I was trying to remember the date on most of that has been in place since.
Like 97, and
Yeah.
we've done a couple of amendments since then, but nothing substantive. And if you want, I can take a minute to sort of describe broadly what those changes are. So the middle housing requires that every lot allow for duplex, triplex, quadplexes. And we also have to allow for townhomes and a certain type of cottage cluster. What we're doing kind of that goes above that is we've added what we're calling a courtyard apartment, which is effectively a fourplex. It's just laid out a little differently. The other thing the state law requires of us is we allow for accessory dwelling units, and we currently do not allow for accessory dwelling units. One of the things the Planning Commission is still discussing is whether or not to require parking for that accessory dwelling unit. We're not required to. We're not required. We are required, we can allow parking, but we can also exclude it, which actually makes things more affordable when you don't have to provide parking. But that's a debate they'll have and finalize. The other thing that they are looking at that's above and beyond the law requirements are the 3-story apartments, the woody walk-ups, we call them. Call them woody walk-ups because they're typically made out of wood and they don't have an elevator. It's a type of construction type. Once you get to 4 stories, you're required to have an elevator. Costs go through the roof, so it changes things. And I think, and then a more broad configuration of cottage clusters. So like Classic Street cottages, or what was recently approved on 3rd Street. Those configurations are not what's dictated by the state law. So we wanted to have more flexibility in allowing that. And then, so those are the things that are kind of going above and beyond. They're also looking at a maximum dwelling unit size. So that's probably the most controversial of all the things, of 3,000 square feet for the first unit, based on the floor area ratio, which is basically the amount of space relative to the size of a lot. So that's kind of broad brush. And then we're going to consolidate zones. So we have R2, R3, R4, and SRR. So we'll be moving to a 3-zone system, one that reflects kind of more of the historic layout of our city. So one thing that we do allow right now, for example, is duplexes, but we have a minimum lot size of 2,500 square feet, and a large proportion of our lots are 4,000 square feet. So you feel me, right? You can't build a duplex on a 4,000 square foot lot. So we're lowering the square footage. So there are amendments to the zoning ordinance, and there'll be amendments to the subdivision ordinance as well. So hopefully, did I overdo it? And Linda will look at me and she's like, you're talking too much.
No, you're not at all, because I think this will be what I watched in Nehalem a year or 2 ago. And it's common. You tell folks you're working on it, you tell folks you're working on it, you tell folks you're working on it, you're working on it. And most people, until it's just normal how this works. And you and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
The work happens, it's not secret, anybody can see it or show up for it, but most people are paying attention to other things. 4th of July parade, other things that we're working on. And then when it hits, it's a surprise to people.
Yeah.
And anything we can do between now and, in the next couple of weeks to make that less surprising and have people get a chance to look at it and see it and understand it, or have questions about it, that means then we'll get really good, meaningful community input about it while we're still considering, after all this work that the Planning Commission has done, and then the council will do. So it's not a usual thing for us to go at length about one of these topics, but I just feel like it's really important. And I think you just can't do enough to get the word out to people. And
Yeah.
Really technical too, so.
Yeah, and I'll note too that every single household within Manzanita's urban growth boundary will receive a letter from us. It's called the Measure 56 notice, which is when you make any kind of change to a zoning ordinance that may or may not impact your property rights, we have to notify you of that. And so we'll be stuffing 2,300 envelopes over the next couple of days, and that notice has to be mailed by Monday. So that will show up in every person's mailbox, and it will include the date of the Planning Commission hearing. And I haven't gotten the draft back from legal, but I was tentative to put the city council date on there, but it has to have the first hearing date, which is the Planning Commission meeting. So every single person and household within the city and the urban growth boundary, because this affects the urban growth boundary too, because our zoning extends beyond our city borders, will get notice of it. It will look kind of scary, but there's, and we'll talk about what those impacts are, but folks will actually be gaining quite a bit of property right because of the increase of types of housing that are now going to be allowed on your property by right.
Well, it was really exciting to hear about the ADUs because Jenna had worked on that years ago to get it started, and it finally is coming to fruition. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very.
Well, nothing's been voted on
No.
yet.
Oh, I know, I
And would
know.
say it'll be like everything else we do. There'll be things that are really exciting to other people that other people are
Really not.
not excited
That's it.
about at all. So that's what we've got to do is listen to all of that.
Right.
Yeah,
Here we thought we were gonna have a short meeting.
Yeah.
it matters.
It does, yeah.
Well, so when you're talking about the notice that is going to go out,
Mhm.
will it go out to the water customers? So
Because
that
that's
the second-
every residential house. in
Every
the City
residential
and
house.
in the UGB.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And just to reiterate, and please correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of these things that people may not be too thrilled about, such as having a fourplex, those are being mandated by the state and we don't have a choice.
That's correct.
It's not our decision.
That's correct.
Work that's being done is to modify those broad rules that you went over at the beginning of your talk to be more specific to what we want in Manzanita and define that versus going with a broader view from the state.
That's correct.
Those are things we have to do.
Yeah, so we'll present it and you'll see it if you watch Marcy's presentation from last month. It's the have to do's and the want to do's. So the have to do's are, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And the want to do's are things that, based on the public feedback we've received and direction from the planning commission. And typically, so this is a legislative amendment to our zoning ordinance. And the way it works is we work it through with the planning commission because they're effectively the sort of subject matter experts in terms of the administration of the zoning ordinance. So they have decision-making authority. And so we work through, and this is the second time I've done a housing ordinance update to meet middle housing. You do a lot of that legwork in planning commission, and then it moves to city council. And it doesn't mean that city council can't say, no, we don't want to do that. And then we would pull back and change, manage, edit, come back. So, but a lot of the legwork gets done at the planning commission level. Then it's the planning commission has to make a recommendation to the city council to approve the ordinance, and then we bring a draft ordinance. We bring that ordinance to city council, but that doesn't mean that's what they have to adopt. They can debate that and give staff direction to change that if that ends up being the case. So I've seen it happen both ways. So, but that's the process. It has to go through planning commission, has to have a recommendation, then it hits the governing body is the ultimate decider.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Worth a little time to clarify.
Plan for that.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
Your workout.
I know.
Okay, anything else?
No.
I feel like I should come up with something. I will. Oh, come on. Thank you, Leila. Okay, so next up, we'd like Dave Dillon to step up to the podium here. Dave Dillon, Dave's going to talk about the Citizen of the Year Award, which I think many of you are familiar with, and a little bit about how that's working this year. Dave?
Yeah, thank you. For the past 35 years, the Manzanita citizenry has honored a local individual or couple who's made a major contribution to the city. And this contribution can be as a community leader, a business leader, a volunteer, an educator, or even a creative artist. Now, the nominees must be residents of Manzanita or within the urban growth boundary, or operate a business or enterprise within the city. So, but currently serving elected officials and city employees are not eligible. But the Citizen of the Year is actually chosen by the former citizens of the year. And since this program started in 1990, a total of 51 local citizens have been named or honored that way, and 23 of them are still around. And so that's the group that's going to gather in a conclave. Just today, I was thinking, that's the perfect word for what we're going to do. So anyway, the committee is looking for nominations, and those nominations can come from anyone or anywhere. So it doesn't matter. People submitting nominations do not need to live within the city of Manzanita. So, but the nominations must be in writing, and submitted to City Hall. Everything goes to City Hall. And at the deadline is 5 PM on Thursday, May 22nd. And then, so that gets all gathered at City Hall, and then they shoot it over to me, and I put on my red hat and talk to the conclave. And then we will make all the instructions on this are on the city website. So we'll get together and come up with our decision, and then that will be announced at the next city council meeting by the mayor, who will be delivered a sealed envelope, and then we go from there. And in addition to all the public recognition for being Citizen of the Year, the nominees, the person so named, get to serve as the grand marshal or grand marshals of the parade. And the parade committee is going to provide a convertible for the event. You may remember last year, we had to have like 3 convertibles because we had Citizens of the Year backed up from previous years. So that's it. We're looking for nominees. Get right on it and write anything you want about them. Just try and make the case, and those nominations will be presented to the conclave, and we'll come up with a decision. So I'm
Right.
sorry, that's such a great word. Does anybody have any questions?
Dave, who were the last 5 Citizens of the Year?
Who were the last? I knew somebody would ask.
You are prepared.
Matthew.
Layla was in 20.
Layla.
Ann Haig, Lee Hilton-Brand, Mike Scott, and now the late Dave Matthews.
Okay.
So God, he was ill, but he certainly deserved it. And let's see, the earliest person still around is Patty Reinhardt, was named Citizen of the Year in 1991. And then our oldest nominee or person honored is Owen Nicholson,
Oh,
who I think is 101
wow.
this year. So, and I still see him being driven around. So, are there any other questions? If you got a nominee, you want to nominate somebody, get it to City Hall by 5 o'clock on the 22nd of March,
Okay.
which is May, excuse me, which is only 2 weeks away.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for all the work that goes into that too. You and your conclavers. Yes.
So one thing, just putting on my Historical Society cap, I'm trying to add to the website pictures of all of the Citizens of the Year. So when the conclave meets, if they could bring their pictures, I would
Great
like to
idea.
get scans of them.
Some of them are on stone tablets, though.
We'll work with that.
You know, I can look around for pictures of these as far back as we go. I don't know how far back.
Well, I've asked you before, but since you're going to have them all, I think they all have pictures of their own.
I forget.
So.
Okay,
Okay.
I will do that.
Thank you, Dave.
You're very welcome.
Doing that
Okay.
for the mayors also.
So next up, we're going to move to new business now. So Laura Bailey, who's on the volunteer committee for the parade, is going to, I assume, make her formal. This is always a tension-filled moment. Are we going to approve the parade permit or not? So, all right, Laura, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, council, and thank you to the community. I'm Laura Bailey. I have the honor of co-chairing the parade committee with my co-chair, Aaron Lasky. We have an intrepid group of about 7, sometimes 8 core volunteers who have been working since 2023 when we first reinvigorated the parade after the dark years of COVID. And then on the day of the parade itself, our volunteer corps swells usually by double or triple because we have lots of community members who help out in things that we need on the day. The parade permit application for this year does not differ much at all from what council will have seen in previous years, if you remember those. The parade begins at 1 p.m. It kicks off. The staging area for the parade is the area behind the new city hall, the field there. This year, the ingress and egress to the staging area will be just like it was last year because, of course, of last year because of construction and this year because of the slight change in the layout and building use of the land there for City Hall. We're overjoyed that by the 4th of July, we'll have access to use the parking lot that is the west parking lot as our staging, because that gives us a huge amount of flexibility and we won't have bicycles on top of children, et cetera, et cetera. We're also very thankful for the close collaboration we have with the city. Both last year and this year, having a City Hall liaison has meant the world to us. Early next week, my co-chair, Erin Lasky, our city liaison, Brad Hart, will meet with Public Works and with the manager of the farmer's market, because the 4th of July this year is a Friday. So it's all kinds of fun.
Oh, my goodness.
It is not beyond us. We can do this. And the reason we can do this is because we're planning in advance. So the CRAC team is meeting early next week to talk about all the logistics of parade staging, parade cleanup, set up for the market, all of which will happen on a beautiful Friday afternoon, which we anticipate, if last year's anything to go by, will be possibly the biggest parade yet in terms of both numbers of entries. Last year was 131, and we do believe that that was a record, although we don't have access to all of the parade numbers going back. But the best way that we judge how big the parade is by how long of a route we need to give it. And last year, we had people still leaving the front of the parade when the early parade participants were coming up Manzanita Ave. So that tells us that this year, the one change to the permit from last year is that we are requesting the parade revert back to what some will call the best route. And some will simply call the older route, which is down Lanita, right on Ocean to Portland rather than to Manzanita, turn east on Portland to First, turn south on First to Manzanita, and then back Manzanita. And what that does is it gives us just enough additional room so that if we have a more elaborate participation that will be able to accommodate them without having traffic disasters or children run over by bicycles or other horrible things. What else can I tell you? As last year, we're getting great help from our community emergency preparedness team. So the CERTs are volunteering once again to be out there with their helpful eyes and first aid knowledge and their bright yellow vests. Brad has spoken to the gang at EVCMB and will be, for the first time, being able to communicate not only with our personal mobile phones, but with radios. So I anticipate that should there be anything that comes up urgently, we'll be able to handle it with aplomb. The parade 2 years ago in 2023 turned out to have a weather forecast that was much warmer than average. So we started a habit that we're now going to continue, which is that we deploy several cases of bottled water in 2 locations that are easily available should people along the route become overcome. One of them is the back porch of the post office, and one of them is the front door alcove of the visitor center. We haven't had any medical emergencies on the parade route, but that's why we have the CERTs and that's why we do things like this. I will also say that that first year that the parade reoccurred in 2023, early that day, I went up and down Lanita speaking to every business that was open to tell them about where the water was deployed. And without fail, every one of them said, "Oh, don't worry, if somebody needs something, we'll get it for them."
Oh,
So there's a real wonderful sort of feeling, which I think is exactly what we would call Manzanita pride. The parade theme this year, the parade committee talked a lot about the fact that for all kinds of reasons, none of which are really that relevant, there was a feeling that the nation, the state, and maybe even the city were still feeling a bit sort of uneasy and a little bit divided. And so we really wanted the parade to do that magic thing that it can do, which is to make us all feel very much like neighbors together. And so when we were thinking about parade themes, we tasked ourselves to come up with parade themes that would generate that sense of togetherness and neighborly unity. And so we came up with 4 or 5 suggestions, and then we handed them over to the person who really gets to make that decision, which is our artist, Lori Dillon, because it's Lori who creates the poster. And so the parade theme this year is Hometown Pride, Family, Friends, and Fun. Lori is busy at work creating the magic that is the Manzanita Parade poster. And as always, it will be sold as an important part of our fundraising it'll be sold at the farmer's market the last couple of Fridays in June. It'll be sold at the visitors center, and a couple of merchants may also be carrying the poster.
Right.
One last thing I want to say before I open for any questions is that the Manzanita 4th of July Parade is entirely volunteer run and community financed. This is not something that businesses are solicited for contributions. This is not something that the city runs, and it isn't something that city ever has run. We've got a great partnership with the city, wonderful relationship with Public Works, with Public Safety, with the team whose job it is to make sure that events like this are happening within the guardrails that can keep them as safe and productive as possible. But we love the fact that the money we spend on the parade comes from nickels and dimes and dollars that get put in contribution jars and from the sales of posters. And every once in a while, from an extraordinarily generous anonymous donation, which we've received last year and we received again this year from an individual. But that grassroots feeling to the parade, we think, is part of what makes it the magic that it is. So any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Thank you.
Anybody from council, if there
Council?
are details that you'd like, Brett?
Just wanted to mention that registration is open.
Yes.
If you want to participate, go to manzanitaparade.com and register.
Right.
Or if you want to volunteer, go to manzanitaparade.com and push the volunteer button, or talk to your friendly neighbor like Brad Hart or Laura Bailey or Dave Dillon or Jim Craig. I've got a few flyers here for anybody who wants to take them. It has all the same information that you're seeing on the screen.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Sounds really exciting. And it sounds like you've done great planning.
It is a hoot. It really is. Although there is this moment that happens, at some point where we all think, We'll say that 2023, where we had 3 years back up. So Jim had to find 4 or 5 convertibles. Yeah, it was a lift. It was a lift, but we're okay now. Jim is in charge of convertible procurement.
Oh, that's
When I should say that.
And golf carts.
And golf carts, that's right. The financing for the parade, as I mentioned, it's very much grassroots contributions. Dave Dillon and I are the co-treasurers of the parade account. We keep those books.
Okay, Dave's busy. He's got a lot going on this month.
He does.
Okay. Laura, thank you very much. And thanks to all the committee members that are working and have worked so hard on this. It just seems like it's back and a regular thing again.
Yeah.
I remember the first year we started back up after the COVID years, and it just was like but now it just feels like, okay, great, we're gonna have a
Yep.
parade and it's wonderful.
We have a Facebook page and an Instagram page for the parade. And when we put announcements up, people get excited very early. And they always ask the same questions. What's the theme? And are we having fireworks?
And we know the answer.
Speaking
to
of
that.
which,
Yeah.
Speaking of that.
signs over there, put them in your yard. No fireworks.
Exactly. We explained to people that the best small town parade available is right here in Manzanita at 1 p.m. And after you enjoy that to the fullest, you can go down to Rockaway. And they have a great fireworks display.
They need to stay here for the farmer's market.
Farmers market and then Rockaway.
Plenty of time for all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Do we
need to
actually need,
approve the parade
yes, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the
I
parade
move to
permit.
approve the parade
Okay,
application.
Tom got right in there with the
Second it.
seconded by Brad. Now hold your breath. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Thank you so
On
much.
behalf of the community, thank you very much.
Yes, very welcome. Okay, so next on the new business, we're going to go back to Layla. This is regarding making a change, which we've been talking about for a while. So I'm glad to see that before us tonight for discussion and a vote to change the city, well, to actually set up more formally city manager's expenditure authority. So I'd like to take us
Yeah,
through that.
thank you. Yeah, so we have been discussing this for a minute, but a typical, one of the main responsibilities I have is the execution of contracts, and a lot of contracts. In most situations, the city manager is delegated authority by the city council through a resolution to have what they call expenditure authorities, meaning I can sign contracts without prior council approval that are essentially budgeted for kind of within scope of work that I have. And so I don't currently have anything officially right now. And so as part of kind of our leveling up of our administration, I wanted to put forward a resolution that allowed for me to have expenditure authority up to $50,000. So that would allow me to execute contracts. It's more efficient. A good example is we had somewhat of an emergency road repair we had to make. And I had to sign that contract to get it done because it happened in a time frame that was not, wasn't conducive to waiting a month for city council to approve it. It was within the budget. We had, resources funded for that. So it's just something I've been talking with council about for some time. And so I did a bunch of research and kind of looked at what is common for cities of our size. And $50,000 was pretty standard across the board. So my request tonight is that city council approve this resolution that would delegate authority to me and authorize me to execute contracts up to $50,000, which means if they're above that, then I will come to council.
Leila, I thought we did that.
We never did it officially. So what we did was for City Hall, when you authorized the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price, you also authorized me to execute contracts up to $100,000 for that project. And so that allowed me to.
So that was project focused.
That was specific to that project.
Okay.
And at that meeting, we talked about doing this and then just never did.
Okay.
So when this issue came up for us, I was like, I need to get that on.
Good.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Any questions, comment from council? It's pretty straightforward. I'm glad we're getting it taken care of. It just helps us move along more quickly, especially if there's an emergency situation. So I'll entertain a motion for this.
I'd like to make a motion for a resolution of the City Council of the City of Manzanita, Oregon, authorizing the city manager to execute contracts and expenditures up to a specific limit without prior council approval, and that limit would be $50,000.
A second?
Second.
Jerry, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that resolution passes. Thank you. Good. Another nice piece of just efficiency put in. I appreciate that. So we're going to go back to old business now a little bit. So this first thing has to do with a Recology rate resolution. So Recology came back. We're looking for, not surprisingly, a rate increase. We had a council workshop on that, met with the gentleman there, seemed reasonable. It was, I know we've got the language in here of the specific amounts. There's also a schedule in here that's provided of what it actually means, but basically was it 2.1% increase. Last year, there was no increase. Last year, they simply made a change, which was then kind of an oversight on their part up until last year when they caught it of the charge for a large container that they actually have to get out of the truck and bring around. So this is a more just across the board. Yeah. Were there any questions or comments from council on this?
I just noticed that I got my Rural Life magazine this week, and the back cover was the director of TPUD telling us increases are on the way. So this is just, a part of our times.
Yes.
This is just done regularly, and they are a really strongly financial, their financials report is really solid, so.
Yeah, it's part of our franchise agreement. So every year they have to do a financial study and then propose rate increases, and then they have to come here and present it, and then you have to adopt it by resolution. So that's, yeah, it's part of the process.
Do we have any public comment on this? We would all love our bills not to go up. That's something most of us have in common, but this is where we are. Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, would I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution by reading the title only. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Manzanita, Oregon, approving solid waste collection rates as presented in our packet.
Second that.
Double second. Tom got that one, I
Tom
think.
got that one.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Resolution passes. All right, now we're going to turn to Counselor Spegman, and he is going to tell us the latest and greatest of where we are with vehicle access on the beach.
Okay, so the Oregon Parks and Recreation Commission has concluded its public comment period. They had a public hearing, I guess it was back in March at this point, but at their April meeting, they decided to first seek the concurrence of the two jurisdictions that would be directly affected, I should say, by this rule. That's the city of Manzanita and the county of Tillamook, because of the stretch of beach on Neocani that is outside of the city limits, or adjacent to outside of the city limits. So essentially, the rulemaking has resulted in a proposal to eliminate off-season vehicle use on the beach, allowing for permitted access in the limited case of dory boat fishing. And the state is encouraging us to work with them to develop a permit process that the city would administer for dory boat launching, which we, based on history, we don't expect there to be very much of that at all. So at this point, the city is being asked to concur with the proposed change. The county is simultaneously being asked to concur. If both bodies concur before the commission's next meeting, which is in June, then the rule change will be voted on and presumably instituted at that June meeting. I don't think this body has an excuse not to act tonight or at the latest at our June meeting. The county may be further behind. I can't speak to their process. And so it could be that the county's concurrence comes too late for the commission to pass the rule change in June, in which case they meet again in September, which would still allow them to institute a rule prior to next off season here. So tonight we are simply being asked to concur with the Park and Recreation Department's determination to change a rule, even though we as a body instituted that process. As I mentioned, I think several months ago, this would be a final step in that process, and we're just being asked to agree with the decision by the state to change the rule.
Other questions or comments?
Chair, I just
from
wanted to
council?
mention, I had seen some feedback that people were concerned about gathering driftwood from the beach.
Yeah, so there actually is a very elaborate set of rules that deal specifically with wood removal from the beach. And that's always been subject to a separate set of state regs. And permits have historically been issued by the state parks for wood gathering or wood removal. So that, in a sense, that's always been kind of separate from the process that we've been looking at. And so, I had an email exchange with Ben Cox at the state park several weeks ago, in which he acknowledged that he has, over the years, issued permits to people that wanted to remove wood and needed a vehicle to do so. Are you talking about just kind of souvenir drift?
Well, no,
Yeah.
people that actually go in
Yeah.
and fill up a truck with
Yeah.
it, they'll still be allowed to do
They'll
that.
still be allowed. Now, it may be that they have not always followed the rules and gotten the permit, but those rules are in place and those permits are available and they are free of charge. So anyone, in fact, one gentleman did come forward and testified at the public hearing. And I think he indicated that night that he has always gotten his permit. And so nothing's going to change for him. He'll still have the opportunity to get the permit and to remove wood. And Ben Cox has also issued permits on occasion for people who wanted to access the beach because of physical disability or impairment that didn't allow them to walk down. Now, we've made a pretty good case, I think, that our visitor center addresses those concerns, but if people still want to use a motor vehicle to access the beach for accessibility purposes, they'll still have that option to go through the state park and get the free permit for that purpose. The only wrinkle here that is being suggested is that a specific permit for dory boat launching be administered by the city. And I was in touch with the folks up in Cannon Beach because they have a process whereby the city issues permits. And it's very straightforward, very simple. They've been doing it for a while. They don't have any problems. Major difference there is that they don't have a gate that can be locked. And so there's no need for anybody from the city to unlock a gate to let the occasional dory boat launch. Now, occasional up there is different. They actually have a pretty thriving dory boat tradition up in Cannon Beach. We don't have that here. And so if somebody needs to launch on our beach, Layla and I have talked about it. I'm sure Sergeant Sims is going to be involved. We'll talk to Ben Cox at the state park. We got to figure out a way to issue that permit without having to get somebody out of bed to unlock a gate at 5 a.m. Because if somebody wants to launch early, I think probably the answer is, as rare as that apparently is going to be, we just need signage to discourage anybody else without a permit, without a reason, without authority to enter the beach at Treasure Cove and leave it unlocked. If others, and not at this level, we don't have to talk about a lock on the gate at this meeting. But if Ben or Sergeant Sims or Layla or anybody else think that we can do it a different way with a lock, we can try that. But that's really the only sort of logistical hurdle to get to work our way through.
And there was a good bit of public comment.
There was a lot
Hearing.
of public comment. And I went through all of it, and I have to say that for the most part, the public comment, I think, affirmed the council's sense that this is a change that is desired by a majority of residents in the community. But there were certainly people opposed. However, the overwhelming majority of the comments in opposition were from dory boat fishermen and women, not from Manzanita, but expressing a very strong view that the shore should be opened for launching of dory boats, which just doesn't happen here.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen here for reasons that have to do with the ocean and the currents and what have you. It's not because of our rules or anything else. So I don't think we're going to suddenly be turned into a hotbed of dory boat fishing. But I do respect those folks' right to object, and they certainly have, and they feel strongly about it, and they weighed in from various parts of the state.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Any staff comments on this one? No?
No,
Okay.
we've talked about the administration, it's straightforward, and we'll have a new boat launch that will be opening Memorial Day weekends. I think that helps with anything, but we have no concerns.
Yeah, but then you have to go over the bar to get out into the ocean.
All right.
So
Okay, well, we're not going to go there for this meeting, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
we'll
true.
see. If
We're
it
good.
becomes an issue, and is there public comment? Laura?
There's
I see two hands, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I've been sort of monitoring this in a sultry fashion on Facebook. And what I found interesting and a little bit discouraging is that there's a sub-thread of people opposed to this rule change, which is people who enjoy driving on the beach recreationally in the off season. And they're upset that that won't be available to them. And then there's a thread of argument that is, this rule is motivated by tourists and newcomers, and those of us who've lived in this town for a long time value the beach in the old-fashioned way. So there's a real divisive thread through this, and the only reason I bring it up is that I think in communicating when the state finally makes the decision, it might be good to simply communicate a bit more about the range of perspectives that were all taken into account by the city, county, and state. Because we can't stop this kind of division, but I think airing it openly in a very calm way.
Thank you.
And Laura, if I can just respond to that, I'm familiar with some of those strings that you talk about. And not specific to this topic, but anytime the state or the council asks for public comments, you need to comment with the state and the council.
I know.
Not on social media, because a lot of those comments were not in the summary from the state as to what they were told. So if you're going to complain or support anything that the state or the city does, it's very important to get in touch with those entities, not social media.
Yeah, and because that doesn't happen, there's a level of sentiment that is uninformed by what happens in the official process, which is why I'm suggesting that connecting those two processes is probably a good idea.
Thank you. And in the back corner, Mike?
I just had a question. This rule change is specific to the beach in front of the city of Manzanita?
No, it's from the it's from Neoconi Mountain to the,
So it includes the county as well.
it includes the part of the beach in front of Neoconi itself. So yes, that's why the county also has to do what we're doing tonight. They have
And then
to.
down in front of the state park as well?
The state park is already, if there's, I was down at the state
That's
park.
controlled by the state park already.
Yeah, there's no vehicle use allowed on that part of the beach.
Thank you. Okay, anything else from council? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I'll make a motion that the city of Manzanita concur with the decision of the Oregon State Parks and Recreation Commission to change the rule allowing for off-season vehicle use on Manzanita Beach.
Second.
Seconded. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, resolution passes. Thank you. Thank you for your work on that. Jerry, you'll keep us informed of the timing of the county, and then
Sure.
we'll come back and know when that's official, because it doesn't go into effect until the county has done their
Well-
work, correct?
Well, so.
Oh, I'm gonna get one of those yes and no answers.
No, you're effectively right, but
Okay.
essentially what the state is saying is, here's what we're gonna do, but we're not gonna do it until you two concur. So technically, the state is holding its decision in abeyance until the two jurisdictions concur, but you're right. So if the county concurs, then the final piece of the puzzle is for the state to say, okay, we've heard from the public, we've heard from the two governmental jurisdictions, and this is what we're going to do.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move on to council updates now. Brad, do you want to start us, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
I'll give my normal update about our communications with the community. On the city website, on the frequently asked page, between last council meeting, April 9th, and today, we received 249 visits to that page. And then the actual often asked questions document, that is interactions with council and the public, answering questions to make sure factual information is out there and available for all, was downloaded 112 times. This last month, to our team mailbox for the council, we received 5 emails, a little bit slower than some of the previous months, but all good. We were asked a question, and there was a concern about police capacity for coming growth for the city, and to make sure things are covered when one of the officers may be sick or out. I think you've all seen in the proposed budget that we're going to look at promoting Max to a full-blown police officer. He will still be focused on enforcement, but that will give some of the other official officers the ability to have a little bit of relief because he can cover for them. We received one about the farmer's market and the memorandum of understanding we executed with them, basically praising the work we had done and that they saw very positive things in that in regards to our relationship with them on the long term and safety for the community. We had some input on the STR rules that we've been discussing and some questions. I want to make sure everybody realizes that we're a ways off from making any final decisions there, probably this fall. So there's still the ability for the community to provide input to us. And when that topic comes up on the agenda for a future meeting, I would encourage anyone to send us information, their feedback, or to come to the live hearings or appear on Zoom. We had a request for an open lot in the city to potentially be purchased by the city to leave it as a green space. Was an interesting concept, but not something the city takes lightly. We're in the process of doing some asset inventory. The budget's been approved for this year. We didn't have anything on the radar for purchasing more land, so it's not something the city would be interested in at this time. But with coming ordinance changes, parks plan, the comprehensive plan, it could potentially be something we look at in the future. And then the last one was more feedback on STRs. That was my updates. And you heard Laura mention I'm the liaison to the 4th of July parade committee. So Laura gave a great update, so I don't have anything else to say about that.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work on that. Jerry?
No, I've got nothing.
Okay, the parks took it all from you?
Parks
You got
took it
nothing?
all.
Okay.
That's a big deal.
All right.
Okay, so we had a training for all of the city councils, Wheeler, Manzanita, and Halem, on the ICS 100, led by Todd Simmons, who is.
Which you should explain ICS 100.
I'm just about to do that.
Great.
Thank you. It's led by Todd Simmons, who's the general manager for TPUD and was a firefighter before that. So he has really great knowledge. ICS is how the city conducts itself during an emergency, the chain of command, the operating strategy, and how that works. And it's just an excellent class. It was scheduled for June the 2nd, but there was a conflict of interest, or not conflict of timing for Todd. And so it's been changed to November the 3rd. It's a full day, and I really hope you put that on your calendars now because it will come up soon, but it's a really good class. And then we have a Tsunami 101 coming up on the day of the next council on June the 3rd. We're going to bring in the Oregon Emergency Management Division, the Oregon Resilience Committee, the DOGAMI, and the National Weather Bureau. And it will be to answer any questions that you have from a technical standpoint to how you can be better prepared. Starts at 10 and will go to 1. And I am really hoping everyone can attend. So thank you.
Thank you, Linda. That'll be here at the Pine Grove, I
It'll be
presume?
here at the
Okay.
Pine Grove. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Tom?
So we're not scheduled to adjourn till 7:50. Does that mean I have 45 minutes?
No.
No.
Rats. Well, on April 25th, I attended a presentation by the League of Oregon Cities that was specifically for small cities here on the North Coast. And so there were cities represented like Gerhardt, Seaside, it was in Seaside, Rockaway Beach, and Warrenton were the notables. And the presenter was a woman from Oregon Heritage, who I've run across before. And the conversation was mostly about ways that Oregon Heritage could help small cities. The takeaway that I got was about becoming an Oregon Heritage All-Star community. And I think that of the 24 criteria, in order to qualify as a Heritage All-Star community, you have to have fulfilled 15 of them. And I think I'm going to be starting to reach out to the leadership at the Pine Grove and at the Hoffman and EVCNB, because I think between the group of us, we've already fulfilled a good number of those and we would qualify. I have some questions about whether we need to reach out to some of the other small cities here in the valley in order to do the full complement of what would really be expected of us. But I think that this is kind of low hanging fruit and I'm going to start working on this. I talked with Layla about this yesterday, and I think we're in agreement that it really wouldn't require much in terms of staff time. And it would tighten up some of the things that we do in terms of preserving our heritage, not just with the artifacts and things that we've collected along the years of what our history has been, but also and recognizing that history is ongoing and continuing to protect the things and catalog the works that are taking place as they're taking place. So I'm excited about this. It's the other portion of it is, that's all wonderful and good. And, we could be an all-star community and hooray for us. But what does that mean? What do we get? Other than a street sign that says we're an all-star community. And I'm sure Nan Devlin will be really excited to think that we might be, because it's a marketing plus, but it also makes us eligible for some grant opportunities that we might not otherwise be eligible for. So I'm in the very beginning stages. I had another conversation with our presenter this afternoon to talk to her about how we really get the ball rolling on this. And so, like I say, I'm in the early stages of this, but this is something that's right up my alley. And so I think it's something that I can do to not just the benefit of the Historical Society, but the community here too. Just as a little offshoot, one of the ideas that got floated was to create a genealogical society, which when I start talking about genealogical stuff these days, people get so excited. And I just think that that's another thing that can be a whole lot of fun. The other thing, putting on my hat as being the executive director at the Historical Society, I want to remind everybody that the Historical Society is the presenter, organizes the Memorial Day ceremony that takes place out at the Nehalem VFW cemetery. It's kind of a funny thing because for years, Stevie Burden used to put this together while she was the mayor. And when she stepped down from being the mayor, about 10 days before Memorial Day, somebody said, "Aren't you guys in charge of that?"
I've heard that before.
And we said, well, sure, we'll do it. And since then, we've organized ourselves and turned it into something I'm pretty proud of. And if you haven't been to it before, I'm telling you, it's really worthwhile going to. A lot of the families up in the valley that have really lengthy heritage in this community, and a lot of their descendants are out in that cemetery. And a lot of veterans in this community who feel strongly about Memorial Day are there. And so, it's good. Our neighbor over here on the other side, right on the corner, she came 2 years ago and she said, "You invited me because you wanted me to cry." And she took it to heart so much. So it was a wonderful thing. If you haven't been, you should. If you have been before, I hope you'll come again. And that's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you. I went last year. It's the first time I'd been to it, and it was a really good thing to attend, and I'd recommend it to anybody.
Yeah,
It just
it's
was
good.
a nice ceremony and well done. So thanks for that. Okay, I'm going to pass on an update tonight. So if there's nothing else.
7.
Okay, so brevity is not the point of these meetings. I get enough feedback from people. Can't you make those meetings a little shorter? But when we have things to talk about, this is the place we have to do it. So I'm nonetheless happy to call our meeting to a close at 7:10 PM. It's still light outside.
Fantastic.
It's amazing to think we're back in that zone again. So it's nice to see the faces of people here. I hope everybody has a good evening and rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.